Topical issue session. We're talking of God's manifestation, and today's title is Mind-Boggling Universe. God's manifestation. When I talked about God's manifestation and talked about energy, I think it left us wondering. It left us spellbound in what God is and what God can do. This is another boggling thing about the presence. Those who are interested in things to do with the universe and galaxies, this is a story for us to share. Those who have not taken an interest, please take an interest. Just listen to this and it will make you also take a lot of interest in what happens around. Our God is a mighty God. It's a great God. You cannot be able to measure his dimensions, his thoughts, his intelligence, his ability. So for those who used to gang together and say there's no God, the things around us tell us about God. Show us about God. Testify to us about God. You don't need a testimony from somebody to believe that God is there. When we look in the sky, because there was this time we were talking of the two spacecrafts that have been traveling for over close to 50 years or over 50 years, expecting to reach the end of the sun's influence, but as they go, they still realize that the sun's influence is still being felt. And they have not been going at a very slow pace. They have been going several times, almost 20 or something times the speed of a bullet. More than 20 times the speed of a bullet. And they have taken that length of time. It's a great distance. For those who like studying things in the galaxies, things in the universe, we start with units. We talk of Earth units, that's astronomical units, the distance from the Earth to the Sun. That becomes the minimal measurement. But as you go further, that becomes too minute a measurement to use. So now, people start using the speed of light. How long can light travel? And when the spacecrafts were visiting a place like Uranus, Neptune, they've taken a long time, but reaching those places, if you are going at the speed of light, you will take almost 4 hours. So when the spacecrafts cover that distance, your communication is a 4-hour communication. Whatever you say now will reach them at 4 hours. And then after 4 hours, the reply will also take 4 hours. So you give something now, it will reach there 4 hours, wait for another 4 hours to get the reply, if it's replied to instantly. But then when we look at the universe, there are clusters that are called galaxies. And there are some that are hundreds of thousands of light years away. So some things that we are seeing, some stars that we are seeing what was happening to them before our great-great-grandfathers were born, before many generations that we live were born. What we see from distant stars is mostly history. You may be seeing 50,000 years in history, because that's the length of time the light has taken to reach us. So God's universe is so expansive. I looked at the books of scientists, some studies from National Aeronautical Space what? It's this NASA. Can't be able to place when I remember I'll use, but NASA, it's the one that deals with the space study in the United States of America. They look at our cluster. Our cluster of stars is the one where the sun is. The sun is a family member of those stars. And a sun is one of the family members out of over 200 billion stars. That is one cluster. For instance, if we said we are talking about Kenya, we are talking about now one house. One house called the Milky Way, having over 200 billion stars. So just in our galaxy alone, if you were to take a person on this earth, and each person is used to name a star, there will be so many stars left. Are we 8 billion? We are talking of over 200 billion stars. The earth may be around 8 to 9 billion. So if you take 9 billion, let's put it at 10. Push it more than what is there. 10 billion and talk of 200 billions. That means that 190 billion stars will not be named. That is the expanse of our cluster. And there are over 200 billion clusters known. There is a horizon, because what the instruments could see, they reach a point when they cannot be able to see. Just like when you start at this end, you see a horizon. You see the cloud falling over, you cannot see anymore. So there is also a space horizon where the instruments cannot be able to see. So it means it's very, very expansive. But out of that great number, from the studies that they have been doing, it looks like the Earth, those stars and all these things live like a family. And some of the planets, some of the stars are also rejected from the families. So those are fixed stars. But the others that they are learning, they call them orphan stars. There are so many. That being the number of stars, the planets are so many because, for instance, now the number of the planets going around the sun, minor planets and major planets, we used to learn long time that there were 9 planets, but it was reduced to 8 major planets and many minor planets. There are so many. They have not been able to place the number. Many minor planets and 8 major planets. So that is to do with one star. For instance, give 10 planets or 4 planets to each star and see the number of planets that are there. The number, when you count the number, you cannot be able to fathom how large that number is. And now from that number, there are other planets that have left the stars that were there. They have been thrown into space. They call them rogue planets or orphan planets. They are orphan stars, those that have been thrown out of their galaxies. And they are orphan planets that are moving all over. And I looked at an interesting thing. They were looking into space and they realized there is an orphan planet that is moving. And it appears like that orphan planets, from whatever they are studying, may be harboring some life. So now it even challenges the idea of what we think can be able to hold life. When we look at those things, and we look at ourselves, because in our solar system, let's not even talk of the universe, the rockets that have been able to go past, and even when Voyager was going past, they passed some minor planets. There are so many that they cannot be named. Some are even given numbers, just in our solar system. And when they reached a planet they call Sedna, because there are other planets that have been there. There is Pluto, Haumea, Makemake. There are others, and others have been given numbers. When they reached Sedna, the earth appears, the sun appears like a small star. The earth, it cannot be visible from that point until you use very strong instruments to view. So that is within our solar system. If you imagine that vastness, that expanse, and look at ourselves, if the earth cannot be seen, then what about us? Because if somebody was to get a plane and move up in your town, and you stand outside, you will be a very small thing, very minute. And there's a height that when one goes, one won't even be able to see the people in that town. The whole town becomes small to an extent that you can't see the town. It becomes a dot and it fades away. So that is how mighty God is. When you look at those things in the universe, you look at the galaxies, you look at the stars, you look at the planets and the orphaned planets and the orphaned stars, you come to realize that God's power and expanse is beyond what we can comprehend. It's mind-boggling. When we compare that and compare with our size, then we realize how privileged we are that God can be able to interact with us on one-to-one basis. It is a privilege that God can be able to interact with us on a personal basis, that you can be able to call upon God and His presence manifests upon you. Yet, whatever He has built, whatever He has made, is just too expansive that you cannot comprehend. There is no horizon. There is a horizon. Nobody knows how far it extends. That is what we are seeing. So we don't know what fraction of what we are seeing. And beyond that, there are some religious books that were saying whatever we see is just like a beginning of a cell within the main body. Because if you look at a human being, a cell is a very small thing. You are composed of billions and billions and billions and billions of cells. And so goes to the universe. Whatever we may be seeing as galaxies may be small components within a cell of the major entity who is God. That is how vast God is. We are all, we are amazed by his presence, his existence, the expanse of his might, and the expanse of his might also in a tiny form that he can be able to interact with you and fit within you. So that makes us feel privileged that God interacts with us in a sense that we can be able to use our intelligence to be able to link with his intelligence to understand what is around us, and have been given even some creative power, because God says, if you believe, and this is what it says from the Bible, whosoever believes, whosoever. So it's not only limited to Christians. Whosoever believes in something and believes it will happen strongly with enough faith, you are capable of changing that thing, because God is able to manifest through you. But that is how mind-boggling God's expanse is. That there can be planets, there can be suns, and some suns are bigger than our sun, far, many times. A sun that may be around 6,000 times, yes, the size of the sun. And there are smaller ones, and we coexist within all that expanse on one planet, which when you go some distance from here, you're not able to see. It becomes a dot, just a small blue dot. That's where we live. That's where all our history has been taking place. That is what it is, a small dot. That is what I wanted to share with those who have not taken an interest. Those who have been taking an interest, it is something of common knowledge because you've heard that. And I've heard that many of those people who study stars, many who never used to believe in God, do. After they see whatever they see, they realize that things are not the way everybody takes things to be, because all we see is the sun up there and all that, and we feel everything is okay. But when you start getting to know the secrets of God within the universe, you stand in awe. Yes, God is mind-boggling. That is my take.